You know, there are some promises that live deeper than words. They settle in your bones, in your blood, in the very rhythm of your heartbeat. Pa Jude understood this the day his son Michael was born. He held that tiny boy in his calloused hands and whispered a promise into the humid Nigerian air. "I will give you the life I never had." Pa Jude was a poor man, the kind of poor that teaches you to count every naira twice before spending it once. He sold roasted plantains by the roadside in their small village in Anambra State, waking up at 4 a.m. every morning to prepare his wares, standing under the scorching sun until his dark skin turned darker, until his feet swelled in his worn-out slippers. His wife, Mama Michael, had died giving birth to their only son, leaving Pa Jude to raise the boy alone. But poverty never touched his dignity. He walked with his head high, greeted everyone with respect, and raised Michael with one clear instruction: education is the ladder that will lift us from this dust. When Michael turned 18 and gained admission to study business administration abroad in the United Kingdom, Pa Jude didn't hesitate. He sold their small family land, the only inheritance from his own father. He sold his late wife's jewelry, the last physical memory of the woman he loved. He even sold their modest house and moved into a single room in his brother's compound, sleeping on a thin mattress that barely cushioned his aging bones from the hard floor. His friends called him foolish. His brother, Uncle Emeka, begged him to reconsider. "What if the boy forgets you?" Uncle Emeka warned. "What if London changes him?" But Pa Jude smiled through his tears and said, "A father's wealth is not in what he keeps, but in what he gives to secure his child's future. My son will not forget me. We have a bond stronger than distance." The day Michael boarded that plane to London, Pa Jude stood at the airport in his best clothes, a faded brown kaftan he had worn to 3 weddings and 2 funerals, and he held his son's face in his rough palms. "Remember where you come from?" he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "No matter how high you climb, never forget the soil that grew your roots. Never be ashamed of me, my son. Promise me." And Michael, with tears streaming down his young face, promised. He promised with his whole heart, clutching his father's hands. "Papa, I could never be ashamed of you. Never. You are my hero." But promises, like tender plants, need constant watering to survive. And Michael's promise would soon wither in the cold London air, bringing consequences he could never have imagined. London changed Michael in ways that crept up slowly, like twilight stealing the day. At first he called home every week, his voice excited as he described his classes, his small student apartment, the way rain fell differently in England. Pa Jude would listen on Uncle Emeka's old phone, pressing it hard against his ear, not wanting to miss a single word. He continued selling his plantains, now with renewed energy, because every naira he saved, he sent to his son. There were months he ate once a day, so Michael could eat 3 times. There were nights he shivered without a blanket, because he had sent money for Michael's winter coat. But he never complained, never mentioned his own suffering. As the years passed, Michael's calls became less frequent. Once a week became once a month. Once a month became only on Christmas and Pa Jude's birthday, if he remembered. Michael's accent began to change, his Igbo words fading, replaced by crisp British pronunciations. He started going by Mike now, not Michael. It sounded more professional, more international. He made friends with wealthy students, children of politicians and oil magnates who had never known hunger, who treated poverty like a disease one should avoid mentioning. He attended their parties, wore designer clothes, laughed at their jokes about back home and the primitive ways of African villages. And slowly, shamefully, Michael began to bury his past like a man hiding evidence of a crime he couldn't bear to face. After 4 years, Michael graduated with honors and landed a prestigious job at an international investment firm in London. His starting salary in 1 month was more than Pa Jude had earned in 5 years. He moved into a luxury apartment in Kensington, bought expensive suits, ate at restaurants where a single meal cost more than his father's monthly expenses. He sent money home regularly, yes, but it came without calls, without warmth, transferred through cold banking apps like paying off an obligation rather than honoring a father. Pa Jude, now in his late 60s, his back permanently bent from years of standing, his hands trembling with age, would receive the money alerts on Uncle Emeka's phone and weep quietly. "The money is good," he would tell his brother, "but I would trade it all for 5 minutes of hearing my son's voice." Uncle Emeka grew angry on his behalf. "That boy has forgotten where he came from. Call him. Demand that he speaks to you." But Pa Jude would shake his head. A father does not demand love from his child. He waits for it, hopes for it, prays for it. What Pa Jude didn't know was that Michael was deliberately avoiding his calls. When Pa Jude's number appeared on his phone, Michael would stare at it, his finger hovering over the answer button, then let it ring through to voicemail. He told himself he was too busy, that he would call back later, that his father would understand. But the truth festered like an infected wound. He was ashamed. Ashamed of the single room his father lived in. Ashamed of the plantain stand. Ashamed of the poverty that clung to his origins like a stubborn stain. And that shame was about to make him do things that would cost him everything. The first denial happened on a bright Saturday afternoon in London, 18 months after Michael had started working. He was at an upscale rooftop restaurant in Mayfair with his colleagues, celebrating a successful business deal worth millions. The sun was shining, champagne was flowing, and Michael felt like he had finally arrived. He belonged here, among these sophisticated people with their polished laughs and designer watches. His colleague, a British man named Charles, was telling animated stories about his recent safari in Tanzania when he turned to Michael with genuine curiosity. "Mike, mate, you're from Africa, yeah? Nigeria? You must have incredible stories from back home. What did your family do?" Everyone turned to look at Michael with expectant faces. His girlfriend, Victoria, a stunning British Nigerian lawyer who had grown up in London and was proud of her heritage, watched him closely. She had introduced Michael to her parents the previous month. A warm Nigerian couple who ran a successful catering business and spoke with thick accents they had never tried to hide. In Michael's mind flashed an image of Pa Jude, bent over his coal stove at dawn, smoke rising around his weathered face, carefully arranging plantains for the morning customers. He saw their single room with its rusty roof that leaked during rainy season, the kerosene lamp they used during power cuts, the thin walls that barely provided privacy. And in that sun-drenched restaurant, surrounded by wealth and wine and Western elegance, Michael made a choice that would haunt him. "Actually," he said with a casual laugh that sounded convincing even to his own ears, "I grew up quite comfortably. My father was a successful businessman, owned several properties in Anambra, real estate, some import-export ventures. Nothing dramatic, really. I had a rather privileged upbringing, boarding school and all that. Rather boring compared to a Tanzanian safari, I'm afraid." The lie slipped out so smoothly it terrified him. His colleagues nodded, impressed, and the conversation moved on. But Victoria's face had gone rigid. She stared at Michael as if seeing a stranger, and when he tried to take her hand under the table, she pulled away sharply. After the lunch, in the car ride home, she confronted him. "I met your cousin Catherine at a Nigerian wedding last year," Victoria said coldly. "She told me about your father, about how he sells food by the roadside to survive, about the single room he lives in, about how he sold everything, to send you abroad. And you just lied to all those people about him being a businessman?" Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Catherine talks too much. She doesn't understand how things work here. In this world, perception matters. If people know I came from nothing, they'll always see me as less than... Less than what? Victoria's voice rose with anger and disappointment. Less than Charles, whose father handed him everything? Michael, your father's sacrifice makes you more, not less. It shows character, resilience, values. But this lying, this shame, this makes you small. It makes you weak. You don't understand. Michael shot back defensively. You grew up here. Your parents built their business in London. You never had to explain the kind of poverty I came from. You never had to feel the weight of people's judgment when they learn your father is just a... He stopped himself, but the damage was done. Just a... what? Victoria asked quietly, dangerously. Just a poor street vendor. Michael, do you even hear yourself? They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. By the end of that week, Victoria had ended their relationship. I can't love a man who's ashamed of where he came from, she told him as she packed her things from his apartment. Because one day, when things get hard, you'll be ashamed of me too. Ashamed of us. Ashamed of any children we might have if they don't meet your impossible standards of what's acceptable to present to the world. She paused at the door, her eyes filled with pity rather than anger. Your father gave up everything for you, and you can't even give him the simple dignity of acknowledgement. You're going to regret this, Michael. One day you'll want to make this right, and I pray to God you're not too late. The door closed behind her, and Michael stood in his expensive apartment, surrounded by luxury, feeling more alone than he had ever felt in his life. But instead of calling his father, instead of confronting his shame, he poured himself a drink and buried the feeling deeper. The second denial was worse because it was public and deliberate. 6 months later, Michael's firm was hosting a major international networking event, and he had worked tirelessly to organize it. It was his chance to shine, to prove he belonged among the elite. His boss, Mr. Victor Adeyemi, a wealthy Nigerian man in his 50s who had made his fortune in London but never forgot his roots, had personally praised Michael's work. You remind me of myself at your age, Mr. Victor had said. Ambitious, brilliant, hungry for success. You'll go far in this company. By unfortunate coincidence, or perhaps by divine arrangement, Pa Jude had saved enough money to visit his son. Uncle Emeka's daughter, Catherine, was getting married in London, and the family had insisted Pa Jude come. When Pa Jude called to tell Michael he was coming to London, Michael felt his stomach drop with dread. He made excuses, tried to convince his father to postpone, even offered to pay for Catherine's wedding in Nigeria instead. But Pa Jude was already at the airport, his voice trembling with excitement. My son, I am finally coming to see where you work, where you live. I will see with my own eyes what my sacrifice has built. I am so proud of you. The day of the networking event, Pa Jude showed up at Michael's office building, wearing his best clothes, the same faded brown kaftan from the airport 7 years ago, now carefully patched at the elbows, paired with black trousers that had been mended multiple times, and worn leather sandals. His face was lit up with pure joy and pride. He carried a small package wrapped in newspaper plantains he had roasted himself that morning, wanting to share something from home with his son. Michael was in the lobby, greeting guests, when he spotted his father through the glass doors. His blood ran cold. Important clients were arriving. Mr. Victor was watching. His colleagues were everywhere. And there was Pa Jude, looking exactly like what he was. A poor, elderly man from a Nigerian village, completely out of place among the suits and silk dresses. Michael rushed outside before Pa Jude could enter the building. Papa! He hissed in Igbo, gripping his father's arm and pulling him away from the entrance. What are you doing here? I told you I would come to Uncle Emeka's place this weekend. Pa Jude's smile faltered, confusion clouding his eyes. But my son, I wanted to surprise you. I wanted to see your office. am so proud. You can't come in, Michael said sharply, and the words hit Pa Jude like a physical blow. The old man actually stumbled backwards slightly. Michael tried to soften his tone, tried to make it sound reasonable, but his eyes kept darting back to the building, terrified someone would see them. Papa, I have a very important event today. Very important people from all over the world. Ministers, CEOs, diplomats. I cannot have any distractions. Please, go back to Uncle Emeka's place. I will visit you tomorrow, I promise. The light in Pa Jude's eyes died slowly, like a candle drowning in its own wax. He looked down at his clothes, suddenly painfully aware of how shabby he must appear against the backdrop of gleaming steel and glass and important people. He looked at the package in his hands, the plantains wrapped in newspaper, and felt foolish, like a child bringing homemade gifts to a palace. I understand, he said quietly in Igbo, his voice breaking. I did not mean to embarrass you, my son. I did not think. I should have known. He turned to leave, his bent back somehow more bent, his slow steps somehow slower. He had made it about 10 feet when Charles emerged from the building, calling out, Mike, we need you inside for the opening speech. Who was that old African chap you were talking to? Michael felt Pa Jude freeze mid-step. The old man turned slightly, hope flickering in his eyes, hope that his son would claim him, would introduce him with pride. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything. And Michael, surrounded by the world he had built on his father's sacrifice, made the worst decision of his life. Just a beggar, Michael said loudly enough for his father to hear. They're quite persistent sometimes. I gave him some money to move along. The words hung in the air like poison. Pa Jude stood absolutely still for a long moment, his back to his son, his shoulders trembling. Then, without turning around, without saying a word, he walked away. Michael watched him go, his heart screaming at him to run after his father, to fall on his knees and beg forgiveness, to embrace him and bring him inside and announce to everyone, this is Pa Jude, the man who sold everything so I could be standing here today. This is my hero. But shame and pride kept his feet rooted to the marble steps. He went back inside, delivered his speech to thunderous applause, and told himself his father would understand eventually. Pa Jude made it back to Uncle Emeka's house and collapsed in the small guest room. Catherine found him there, sitting on the floor, still holding the newspaper-wrapped plantains, tears streaming silently down his weathered face. He called me a beggar, Pa Jude whispered. My son, my Michael, called me a beggar. He looked up at Catherine with eyes full of such profound pain that she started crying too. I sold my land for him, my wife's jewelry, our home. I ate 1 meal a day so he could eat 3. I wore these same clothes for 7 years, patching them over and over so I could send him money. And to him, I am just a beggar. Something to be hidden, something to be ashamed of. That night, Pa Jude suffered his first heart episode. The local Nigerian doctor Uncle Emeka called, said it was stress-induced, a warning sign. His heart is weak, the doctor explained. Whatever is troubling him, he needs peace and rest. Another shock like this could kill him. Uncle Emeka called Michael that night, his voice shaking with rage. Your father is in bed with heart problems because of what you did today. Catherine told me everything. How could you? How could you call your own father a beggar? The man who gave you everything. Michael, slightly drunk at the event's after-party, made excuses. Uncle, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. I'll make it right. I'll visit him this weekend. It's just complicated right now. Complicated? Uncle Emeka's voice rose. Your father is lying in bed crying, holding plantains he roasted for you, and you say it's complicated? You have become someone I don't recognize, Michael. Someone your mother would be ashamed of. Michael hung up, angry at his uncle for not understanding. angry at his father for showing up unannounced, angry at the world for making him choose between his past and his future. He didn't visit that weekend, or the next. He sent money instead, a large amount, as if cash could patch the wound he had torn in his father's heart. The third denial was the one that shattered everything beyond repair. A year had passed since the incident at the office. Michael had convinced himself that time had healed the damage, that the money he sent regularly was proof enough of his devotion. Pa Jude had returned to Nigeria, his heart condition stable but his spirit dimmed. He rarely smiled anymore, Uncle Emeka reported in the occasional messages Michael actually read. He still sold plantains, but the light had gone out of him. He kept a photo of young Michael on the small table beside his sleeping mat, Michael at age 10. Gap-toothed and grinning. Before London, before shame, before everything broke. Now, Michael was being considered for a major promotion to Senior Investment Director. It came with a 7-figure salary, a corner office, significant influence, and international recognition. As part of the selection process, the firm conducted thorough background checks and interviews with candidates' families to assess character and values. "We're not just hiring an executive, mister," Victor explained to the candidates. "We're choosing someone who represents our company's values. Family, integrity, humility, these matter to us. Mr. Victor personally called Michael into his office one afternoon. "Michael," he said warmly, "the selection committee is very impressed with your work. You're the top candidate. Before we finalize your promotion, we'd like to meet your family. I understand your father is in Nigeria? We'd be happy to arrange a video call, or even sponsor a visit. We believe in honoring the people who raised our leaders." Michael's blood ran cold. He thought of Pa Jude in that single room, the cracked walls, the modest life that would raise questions. He thought of his colleagues meeting his father, seeing the village accent, the worn clothes, the evidence of poverty that contradicted everything Michael had implied about his privileged upbringing. He thought of Charles's reaction, of the whispers, of how the lie he told at that rooftop restaurant would be exposed. And in that moment, trapped between truth and the life he'd built on lies, Michael made a choice that would curse him. "My father passed away," Michael said, and the lie came out smoothly, practiced almost. 2 years ago, heart failure, very sudden. He even managed to make his voice sound sad, pained. "It's still difficult to talk about." Mr. Victor's face crumpled with genuine sympathy. He came around his desk and embraced Michael, patting his back. "Oh, my dear boy, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You've never mentioned it. What about other family? Your mother? She passed when I was young," Michael said, which was at least true. "I have some distant relatives, but we're not close. I've essentially built everything on my own." "You're a remarkable young man," Mr. Victor said, his eyes actually glistening with tears. "To have built all this, despite such loss, such loneliness. Your parents, wherever they are, would be so incredibly proud of you." The promotion was announced the following week. Michael celebrated with champagne and congratulations, posed for photos, gave an inspiring speech about overcoming adversity and achieving dreams through hard work. Everyone toasted him, praised him, admired him. And in that moment of triumph, Michael's phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. It was a photo of Pa Jude, thinner than ever, sitting outside his single room, staring at his old phone, with an expression of such loneliness it was difficult to look at. The message read, "Your father asks about you every single day. He tells everyone in the village about his successful son in London. He's been feeling unwell lately, but he refuses to worry you because he thinks you're too busy. He keeps saying, 'My Michael will call when he has time. He is building a great life.' When will you call him, Michael? Or does our family not matter anymore now that you have your British friends?" Michael stared at the photo for a long moment. Then he deleted the message. He told himself he would call soon, maybe next week. He told himself his father would understand. He told himself that once he was fully settled into his new position, once things calmed down, he would make everything right. But deep in his heart, in the place where truth lives even when we try to kill it, he knew what he had done. He had murdered his father without touching him. He had killed him with denial, with lies, with shame, and that sin was about to demand payment in ways he could never have imagined. 3 weeks later, Michael was preparing for an important presentation when his phone rang. It was 3 a.m. in Nigeria. Uncle Emeka never called this late, unless something was very, very wrong. What call do you think Michael got by 3 a.m.? Leave your answer in the comments section. 2. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video for more interesting and intriguing stories. See you on the next one.